US President Donald Trump shocked many world leaders today by stating that the US is ready to end the war against Iran even without actually unblocking the Strait of Hormuz. Trump states that the US has achieved its military objectives in Iran, and if anyone needs the Strait of Hormuz unblocked, they should come and fight against Iran themselves. Although I would like to remind you, it was because of Trump's war that the strait ended up being closed. But don't jump to conclusions, because it's worth noting here that during a month of war, Donald Trump repeated 12 times that the war against Iran was about to end. And most often, after such statements, escalation happened instead. And now Israel is saying that the war is only halfway through, while thousands of soldiers from the elite 82nd Airborne Division of the US Army have just started redeploying to the Middle East. In addition, the US has suddenly started actively bombing Pechiy Island, the very one located in the narrow part of the Strait of Hormuz, from which the Iranians visually monitor ship traffic through the strait. Therefore, if there is going to be a landing on an island, it definitely won't be on Kark Island, but specifically on Pechiy Island. My name is Pechiy. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start this episode, I ask you to support the work of this YouTube channel with your donation, paid subscription, or a sponsorship on YouTube. How can you do this? All the links and details are in the description of this video. At the end of the episode, if you find it interesting and useful, you can leave your donation in any way that's convenient for you. There, believe me, you'll find different platforms and bank details, crypto wallets, PayPal, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and YouTube sponsorship. In short, you'll definitely find something that suits you. And don't forget to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechiy News. The link is also in the description of this video. There we post breaking news as it comes in. So, US President Donald Trump told his aides that he is ready to end the war against Iran in the near future. He agrees to this even if the Strait of Hormuz remains largely closed. This was reported by the Wall Street Journal, and Trump himself later stated that, in his opinion, the Strait of Hormuz will open by itself. He says there's no need to fight, everything will be fine. And as the publication notes, in recent days, Trump and his aides have concluded that trying to open the bottleneck in the strait would drag the conflict beyond his plan, which was calculated for 4 to 6 weeks. For this reason, Trump decided that the US should achieve its main goals in this war: to weaken the Iranian navy and missile stockpiles, as well as to wind down the current combat operations, temporarily applying diplomatic pressure on Tehran in order to restore the free flow of trade through the Hormuz Strait. The question is, what kind of diplomatic pressure Trump plans to apply? The question remains completely open because, let me remind you, before the war against Iran, there were, for example, oil sanctions in place. Now, as a result of the war, Trump has lifted these sanctions. If it is not possible to unblock the Hormuz Strait through diplomatic means, Washington will insist that its allies in Europe and the Persian Gulf countries take the lead in restoring traffic through the strait. So, Donald Trump himself started this war, escalated the situation, and now he just wants to get out of the region and tell the Europeans and Arab countries that the blockade of the Hormuz Strait is now their problem. He came, made a mess, left, and now says, deal with it yourselves. Sources also say that Trump may consider military options, but they are not his top priority. The Wall Street Journal adds that if the war ends without the Strait of Hormuz being open, Tehran will likely strengthen its control over this waterway, and the complex operation to open it would be delayed until later, but no longer carried out by the Americans. And against this backdrop, Trump brazenly lashed out at the European allies for not supporting the US enough in the war with Iran. And he made it clear that they would have to open the Strait of Hormuz on their own. By the way, this is already the third time in recent days that Trump has publicly hinted that he could end the war in Iran without reopening the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, Trump is stating that the US will leave other countries to deal with the extremely serious economic problem on their own and restore the supply of about 1/5 of the world's oil reserves. Moreover, the Pentagon also stated that the Strait of Hormuz is actually not an American problem. They say, yes, we came, yes, we started the war, yes, because of this war, the Strait of Hormuz was closed, but honestly, we don't care about that. If you want, go deal with it yourselves. If you don't want to, do whatever you want, it's up to you. Now Trump has also started using the topic of blocking the Strait of Hormuz to blackmail the allies. A quote from Trump: "To all those countries that can't get aviation fuel because of the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, such as the United Kingdom, which refused to get involved in a decapitation strike on Iran, I have an offer for you. Well, first of all, buy this fuel from the US, we have plenty of it. And secondly, have the courage to go to the strait and just take this fuel by force. You'll have to start learning to fight for yourselves. The US will no longer help you just as you didn't help us." But, I just want to point out that before this, Trump actually said several times that he didn't need any help. Well, or maybe I'm confused. Trump publicly said, "We don't need help and we never needed it." And now he says, "You didn't help us, so we won't help you either." It seems to me that this is very much like bipolar personality disorder. But, excuse me, no matter how much Trump brags, his statement about ending the war seems more like a cover for escalating the war instead. And in this regard, the US plans have become a bit more clear. Israel. The US and Israel's mission in Iran has passed the halfway point. Now the main focus is on Iran's stockpiles of enriched uranium. This was stated by the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and according to him, American and Israeli forces have already struck key elements of Iran's military potential, including missile systems, weapons factories, and personnel connected to the country's nuclear program. And although Netanyahu refused to specify exact timelines for the end of the conflict, he expressed confidence in maintaining a positive dynamic in the American-Israeli alliance. At the same time, the Israeli army stated that Israel is ready to continue attacking Iran in the coming weeks. For this, the country has a sufficient number of targets and munitions. And probably the most important thing, the Americans bombed Qeshm Island today, the very one located in the narrow part of the Strait of Hormuz. From there, the Iranians can visually monitor ships passing through the strait. So, if there is going to be a landing on the island, it definitely won't be on Kark. There's probably no point in that anymore, because everyone keeps saying Kark, 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 but probably not. And most likely the landing will be on Qeshm Island, where a huge amount of Iran's weaponry is concentrated. And against this backdrop, thousands of soldiers from the elite 82nd Airborne Division of the US Army have begun redeploying to the Middle East. The arrival of the paratroopers will continue throughout this week, and overall the contingent will number about 3,000 service members. Among the forces already deployed are the division's command headquarters, a support unit, and a brigade combat team. Earlier, thousands of sailors and marines had already been sent to this region. So, it can't be denied that the US continues to prepare specifically for a ground operation. And next, I want to draw your attention to a very important point. Donald Trump announced today that he is already ready to end the war against Iran, and he agrees to this even on the condition that the Hormuz Strait remains completely closed. Trump insists that from now on the Hormuz Strait is not his problem and not a problem for the United States. But Trump's statement does not actually mean the real end of the war. In just 1 month of this war in the Middle East, Donald Trump has declared the end of the war 12 times. That's basically once every 3 days. And I suggest we recall all these moments and analyze what happened each time Trump made such statements about ending the war. So, Trump's positions regarding ending the war with Iran are extremely contradictory, as he tries to convince the American people that the conflict will not lead to a prolonged war. Even today, the White House states, quote, "We are very close to achieving the main objectives of Operation Epic Fury, and this military mission continues at full scale." U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated on Monday, quote, "All objectives are being achieved ahead of schedule or on time and should be accomplished within a few weeks." But the one shouting loudest about the end of the war, of course, was Donald Trump himself. And I'll give you those very 12 instances when Trump mentioned the end of the war, and this happened in just 1 month of this war. The first instance. On Monday, March 30, Trump, in his post on the Truth Social website, threatened to destroy Iran's energy and water infrastructure if agreement to end the war was not reached. His quote, "If the Hormuz Strait is not immediately opened for business, we will end our wonderful stay in Iran by attacking all these plants." He said that in that case, of course, the war would come to an end. However, the next day he stated that the Hormuz Strait was no longer his problem. The second case. At a cabinet meeting on March 26, Donald Trump stated, quote, "They have been defeated. They will not be able to recover."
They have been defeated. They were decisively defeated. They are telling people that it's terrible.
In fact, Trump stated that Iran has been defeated and all that remains is to technically bring the surrender to its logical conclusion. The third case. On March 24, Donald Trump went even further and stated that the war was already over and that there would be a regime change in Iran. Quote, "We have won this war. This war is already won."
I think we will end the war. I can't say for sure. I don't like to say this. We have won this war. This war has been won.
On March 23, Donald Trump hinted at a peace agreement regarding the war with Iran in a message on the Truth Social website written in such big capital letters, and stated that the US and Iran had very good and productive talks about a peace agreement. However, Donald Trump immediately added that if the deal does not happen, quote, "we will continue to bomb as hard as we can." Fifth, in an interview with Fox News on March 13, Donald Trump stated he suggested that the war would end when, quote, "I feel it with my whole being, but he doesn't think it will last long." That's when Donald Trump said that Iran had already capitulated. It's just that there's no one in Tehran to sign the capitulation and the war continues simply because Donald Trump himself hasn't decided yet that it's time to stop, but actually they've already won. Just a reminder, this was on March 13. On March 12, Donald Trump gave a candid assessment. They are practically finished. Iran is done. That doesn't mean we're going to end the war immediately, but it's only a matter of time. Everything has already been decided. Seventh case. On March 11, President Trump told Axios that the war with Iran would end soon because there was practically nothing left to target. He said the war would end, quote, "anytime I want." At the same time, on the 12th day of the war, Trump assured that Iran no longer had any missiles or drones left. Iran's Navy and Air Force have been completely destroyed and wiped out, and overall, there isn't a single untouched place left in Iran. And now he doesn't even know what to bomb there anymore. He says there are no more targets left for attack. On the same day, March 11, Trump told the crowd, quote, "You never want to talk about victory too soon, but I'll say this. We've already won. It was over in the very first hour." A few minutes later, he added, quote, "We don't want to leave too early, right? We have to finish the job, right?"
Operation Epic Fury. That's a great name. It's only good if you win. You know, you can only do it. And we've won. Let me tell you, we've won. You know, you never like to say too early you won. We won. We won the bet. In the first hour, it was over.
On March 9, in his speech at the Republican Party conference, Donald Trump hinted that the U.S. had already won this war. Quote, "We have already achieved victory in many ways, but that's not enough for us. We are moving forward with even greater determination to achieve a final victory that will put an end to this long-standing danger once and for all."
We've already achieved victory in many ways, but that's not enough. We are pressing ahead with determination to achieve a final victory and end it for good.
On March 9, Trump stated that the war with Iran would end very soon, and that Iran, quote, "would be completely destroyed." Now, this can be called a huge success. That was on March 9. Case 11 on March 2, at a press conference dedicated to awarding 3 American soldiers the Medal of Honor, Trump proudly announced success in the war. Another quote, "We will win easily no matter what it costs us."
We have the strongest and most powerful military in the world, and we will win easily.
And now the 12th case. In an interview with ABC News on March 2, Donald Trump stated that the operation was a complete success. Just on the 3rd day after the war began, he says the operation is almost complete. "No one else could have done this except me, and you know it."
No one could have done this except me, and you know it.
And so, each of the 12 times when Donald Trump declared victory or said the war was over, that the end was near, and so on. Each time was accompanied by a statement that the help of US allies was not needed. But the longer this war lasted, the more often Trump reacted nervously when the Europeans refused to help him in the war against Iran.